Hi, this is Steve Kamanapali, and I'm glad that you're here. Today, we're going to be doing this video a little bit differently, and I'd like for you to open your Bible to Acts chapter 15, which describes the Council of Jerusalem. Now, of course, it's not a board meeting in the contemporary sense, but in many respects, it mirrors something very similar. It displays many of the principles we would hope to see in a meeting of the directors of any nonprofit in today's world. So your assignment is this: read through the text and identify important principles of meetings, communication, decision-making, anything that you believe would help any group wrestle with important governance issues. Now, in a few minutes, we'll have you share these observations, and I'll come back and we'll discuss them as a group. So, start reading Acts chapter 15, verses 1 to 31, and I'll see you in a minute. You can go ahead and pause the video now. Welcome back. Here are a few things that I saw in my study. Maybe you saw them in your study too. Well, first of all, the topic was really important. Could you tell they took a significant amount of time to discuss it? There were a lot of different opinions of what they should do, and that's for sure. Second, it wasn't all done in one meeting. In fact, it appears that there were a series of meetings over a short time. There were public meetings with Paul and his companions, and though it wasn't in your text in Galatians chapter 2, there was even a possibility of a private meeting as well. Another thing I saw is that the council itself, or you could say trustees, they met together through their final decision. You can see that in verse 6. As I mentioned before, in verse 7, they had a lot of discussion. Well, things were put into a context with a larger picture that were described by Peter in Acts chapter 15, verse 7 to 11. And note, this is the last time that we hear of Peter in the book of Acts. Isn't that interesting? They had active and serious listening to the facts and evidence. They also examined the scriptures in verse 13 to 18. And don't underestimate the contribution of James. He's the guy that kind of kept this meeting going and kept the conversation going and kept it together. Finally, they've had consensus. In fact, in verse 25, it says, "Good to us that we become one mind." And they summarized that decision in verse 23. Now, when it comes to your board, we've talked a lot about a lot of ideas, but what's one thing you could do to make your board meeting better? Well, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.